Councilors, we're going to get started. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Peabody City Council Finance Committee meeting. Present this evening for the committee is Councilors Gould, Manning Martin, Rosignol, Turco, and myself. Councilor McGann is chair. Also present, Councilors Welton, Matsoulis, Charest, Saslaw, O'Neill, and Melville. We have two items on the agenda tonight. First item is the request to combine the existing skating rink enterprise and golf course enterprise fund into one recreational enterprise. Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Council. Great to be with you. Hope everybody's doing well. Here tonight for a request, as was stated, to combine the existing skating rink enterprise and golf course enterprise funds into one that we would title Recreation Enterprise. As all of you know, we have two existing enterprise funds that are independent from the city operating budget. The first is the golf course, and of course the second is the skating rink. We take those up. We'll be taking those up next week after we take we go through the regular budget. The reason for the request is we believe that this benefits both of these operations long term. And specifically, they're able to help each other out when one is up, one is down. I think over the last few years, there's been some adjustments in success in terms of bringing in money, and those are for varying factors. But we believe this operation, combining them, will be good in the long term for both of these operations, and we'll be able to invest in both of these operations going forward. We have had great success this year at the golf course and not so much at the skating rink. Golf course is set, and you'll be seeing the numbers that we provided in the packet. They are having their best year they've ever had. And that goes in line with what's taken place over the last 15, 16 months in terms of COVID. People are looking to be outside, and we've been able to have a very successful operation over at the golf course this past year. And again, they'll be record-setting. The skating rink was completely the opposite, was deeply adversely affected by the pandemic, where they had to shut down their operation for a significant period of time. And they are in a position where they are going to be down about $88,000 this year. The golf course typically runs at about $1.1 million is the operating costs. We expect their number to be at $1.6 million, which is a $500,000 profit for the golf course. And this year, as all of you know, we do not have to pay on the loan. That has been taken care of. Our last payment on the mortgage was last year. So that is direct profit for us. The skating rink, this year we were able to cut some costs, but again, it's down $88,000. For a number of years, the skating rink was a moneymaker for the city. The last few years, it has not been for a variety of reasons, and a lot of this is just cyclical in terms of skating rink and in terms of golf course. One seems to be up, the other seems to be down. The golf course is doing well for us the last couple of years. The skating rink has been struggling, in particular the last year and a half. You may recall a couple of years ago we had a down year at the golf course, and there was some concern about the future of the golf course. We did an independent review, an independent study to try to make some improvements to the golf course. Some we were able to utilize and have made some improvement, but a lot of it is just weather related, a lot of it is just cyclical, and certainly the last year and a half people are wanting to be outside, and the golf course has been the beneficiary of that, and the ice skating rink has not been. Both of these, both the golf course and the skating rink are in need of work. And we think that the Enterprise Fund will assist in that. The golf course, we've put in, you'll see here in the budget coming up next week, we've put in for $200,000 of repairs to the golf course. long-time needed repairs that we think will have a great benefit to the golf course and the operation there. The skating rink, as all of you know, a year and a half ago, was right before COVID, or a couple of years ago, and many of you were involved in this. We were looking at doing some renovations to the skating rink, in particular to the locker rooms, and in particular to the women's locker rooms. That's still a project that I think we need to do, and hopefully now that things are better, we can start looking again at these projects, because so many things have been put on hold. But that's certainly a problem we have at that rink that needs to be addressed. We have a lease agreement with the state for the ice skating rink till 2027. At that time, we can certainly look to have a further lease agreement with the state, or look at other options. But we do have an operating agreement to 2027. One other factor on the skating rink is that in 2012, we did a major project over at the skating rink, new ice, new glass, new boards. We put in a cooling system that allowed for a year-round operation. At the time, the skating rink was only operational, or was not operational, for the summer months. We put in a cooling system that allows for full operation during the full year. That is running about $90,000 per year. That runs through 2027. It was a 15-year loan that we're paying off. For our debt service is about $90,000 a year. So the issue over the last few years, in particular at the skating rink, is that we haven't been able to sustain payment of the debt service, the approximately $90,000. So certainly combining these will allow us to withstand a little bit of downtime in the skating rink. We think that things will be getting dramatically improved over there, and allow us to do long-term projects that we need to do, both at the golf course, which we're looking to do next year, this coming year, and at the skating rink, where I think there needs to be some work there, particularly, again, to the locker room. So we think this is a good investment. We think it makes sense for us. Mike Gingras is certainly here to answer any more specific questions about finances and things, but we do believe it's a good step for us to take for the short term and for the long term. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Questions from the committee. Councilor Rossignol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor. I just have a couple. Regarding you mentioned the lease about the hockey rink. What is the lease status of the land for the golf course?
That lease expired with our last mortgage payment.
Are we looking to try to get back into a lease agreement?
Yes.
Is that currently active?
No.
Okay. The other question I have is regarding, and you mentioned it kind of perfectly, as one goes up, that's going to supplement the other, whether it be the golf course, which is had an influx of patrons. The one thing that makes me a little bit nervous about combining the two is that as the golf course gets utilized more often, it has more wear and tear, it's going to need more maintenance. What I wouldn't like to see is that because we're paying the debt of an entity that needs we end up shortchanging maintenance on the other entity. I just want to make sure that there is a safety mechanism in place that we're always maintaining in this case, the golf course. The golf course is a revenue-generating entity. I want to make sure that the golf course is getting the maintenance it needs, and we're not just going to take the money that we've made on the golf course and supplement that to the ice skating rink. Is there going to be some sort of mechanism to make sure that there's always a funding source for maintenance for both of these entities?
Very good question, and certainly I think all of you know the golf community and the hockey skating rink community are both very passionate about their individual sports and activities. And without question, I think both entities need to be improved upon and enhanced. So I can't say that there's a specific mechanism we have in place. I mean, every year we'll be bringing the budget to you for your approval and vote. And right now, we felt that the golf course needed the investment immediately. And that's why the $200,000 you'll see is in there. But I envision that we'll also be utilizing some money, probably next budget, to do some repairs over at the rink, depending on the long-term future of the rink and what we're going to be doing with that. So I anticipate that we'll be spreading that money around to both entities, both for short-term projects and also looking at long-term projects.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One last question regarding the rink. Are you envisioning increasing the fees that we charge outside entities for utilization of the rink?
That's something I know that they're looking at. Again, a lot of it is just going to be based on what the market holds for the rink. It has fluctuated interest in camps and in programs, and we do have another rink that we're in competition with over at Essex Tech. So a lot of that will be determined by market. I know there's still a great deal of interest, and Paul Legitimacy and his team are working very hard to come up with new ways to generate revenue. So yeah, it's just going to depend on the market, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Rossignol. Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, as you know, I'm a big proponent of this. I think it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. You're 100% right. You stole a lot of what I wanted to say as far as it's cyclical. I mean, the skating rink will be back. We know that. I mean, when the Bruins win a championship, kids will become more interested in hockey. When the Winter Olympics comes along in 2 years, if the Olympic team goes anywhere, or there's a Michelle Kwan or a Nancy Kerrigan, girls will become interested in figure skating. If there's an Apollo Ono, you're speed skating. It'll come back. So I think they do subsidize each other very well, and it's a safety mechanism for us. I understand it was my initial thought with Councilor Rossignol said is I don't want to deplete the golf course, obviously, at the expense of the skating rink. I don't think that will happen, but it's no different than what we have right now, because we still make that decision every year at the budget. If we see that, and Peter and Paul Legitimacy and Peter Cronin come before us, and if Peter says, his numbers are slipping or he needs, excess maintenance, we make that decision every year during budget anyway. So it's really not going to change anything, except give us more options. And I think the more options, the better. One of the things I like about the enterprise, and maybe Mike can clarify, I think I'm right, that if we decide to combine the enterprise, it's only a 3-year obligation to do that. So at the end of 3 years, if we wanted to separate them out again, we didn't like the way it was going, maybe we'd do that. But my biggest fear is losing the skating rink at some point at the end of 6 years. I think that it's a pride in this city to have a skating rink, to have walking trails, biking trails, golf courses. I mean, there's a lot of amenities in this city that no other cities have. I'll add 2 farms into that. I don't want to lose the skating rink. I don't know if that would ever be an option in 6 years at the end of the lease, but I know that we can't sustain the amount of debt. So I guess that leads to my question to you is, if the council decided not to do that, that would leave us with an $80,000 deficit in the skating rink budget, which would then what? We'd have to defer that to the taxpayer in our yearly budget?
Thank you, Councilor. And a couple of things before I go to that question. I do want to thank you because you brought this to us early, this idea, and we think it's a good one. And you explained things well. This would be a 3-year commitment. If this does not work for us and we as a group are unsatisfied with how things have gone, we have that ability to separate and go back to having individual enterprise funds for the golf course and for the skating rink. And yes, the answer would be, if we do not combine into one, let's use this year as an example, then we're $88,000 behind on the golf course. That would be money that I would be putting in to fund through the budget and then through the taxpayer. It's all taxpayer money, as always, but that would be specific to the budget. And without question, I am very much committed to long-term the skating rink, because I do, and Councilor Turco, you said it very well, that that's a point of pride for our city. And I think the building needs to be brought up to some degree in the DCR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation. they haven't been very helpful in terms of addressing some of the needs over there, and we're going to have to look to do it ourselves. So, but I think we need to bring that building up to make it more of a source of pride for us. But the skating rink needs to be a part of our long-term future.
Thank you. And I also wanted to mention what you mentioned regarding Title IX. I mean, I know we're not bound by Title IX because it's not a school-related facility, but I still think that the right thing to do would be to bring those women's locker rooms up to the standards of Title IX, whether we're obligated to or not. And I know that Paula Giudice wanted to do that. You were a big proponent of doing that, but the funding is not there within the enterprise fund to do it. And I think this opens up the door to bring that up to a standard where, you know, women's hockey can actually be very active in the rink. Lastly, one of the major points of interest that I had through discussion with Mike was that and I don't know if other councils know this, the lease is 2.5% of the gross revenue of the skating rink. So I believe, Mike, and I know it was a rough number, I don't want to quote you on it, but it was roughly $15,000 a year. So we're getting the skating rink for virtually nothing. It's just we need to boost the use of the skating rink, and again, I think that will happen. So I would hate to see it go, and I'm in favor of this 100%.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Councilor Manning Martin. Councilor Manning Martin.
I mean, my internet is really not great. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Manning Martin.
Oh, great. Okay, great. As you can see, my internet is not great, so I apologize. And I'll try and be quick. I'm really on the fence about this for two reasons, and my colleagues have touched upon some of the concerns. First, I appreciate the two separate funds. That way you can see when each, whether it's the rink or the golf course, you can hold the finances accountable when they're separate. I know that the mayor mentioned that the rink has, over the last few years, hasn't done that well. So I share the same concerns that Councilor Rossignol has mentioned. And along the lines of Title IX, which has been raised, that's been an ongoing issue up there. And we don't own the building. So I'm wondering, Mayor, which was very frustrating over the years to try and address the Title IX issues, but we don't own the building, and DCR, frankly, didn't give us the time of day when we were reaching out to them to try and address these issues, and they own the building. So I do have concerns about us using taxpayers' money to address those things when it's not our building, and we didn't get any assistance. So that's kind of a sticking point for me right now, that we don't own the building yet. We're going to, you know, very well to and they haven't at all. So those are my concerns, Mayor, if you could address those. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I know the audio was a little challenging there. Did you get the gist of it?
I think I heard most of it. And Council, I know this has been an important issue to you. You've brought that up to me many times over at the skating rink. And it has been very frustrating, DCR not taking more of an active role in addressing the problems over there. And to be truthful, I don't see them stepping up anytime soon. So it's going to be a question of the commitment that we have as a community as to doing that project. Sadly, it looks like it will be primarily on us, if not all on us. Right now, we have 6 years remaining on the lease. Certainly, I think that's something we need to extend. And then at that time, if we have a longer-term lease, that might be the right investment for us. But our concerns and complaints to DCR or our pleas for assistance have fallen on deaf ears as of this point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Manning Martin, anything else?
Thank you. Mayor, maybe we can kind of separate and distinct from your request of the city council tonight to try to attack this issue again, hopefully with better results. Really unacceptable. So perhaps we can pick up again, separate and distinct from your request this evening. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Council. I didn't really hear much of what you had to say right there.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
That's a little better, Councilor Manning Martin. If you could try that again, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mayor, I'm hoping that we can attack this matter again, separate and distinct from your request of the city council this evening to get a better response, more accountability of DCR. Maybe we can create a committee or a task force to better attack that, because it's really unacceptable.
Absolutely, Council. I 100% agree, and I'd welcome your help on that. So yeah, let's bring this forward again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. Councilor Charest.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to speak, not on this committee. And again, the Title IX gives, I think, the majority of us councilors and a counselor who have female athletes really have their strong feelings about getting that locker room up on board and what it should be. So I certainly will put my assistance in anything I can for that avenue to get that up to speed. When you say we have six, through the chair to the mayor, we have 6 more years left on the lease of this. Is this at any? Are we in jeopardy not to be able to extend that lease after the 6 years? My concern is if we want to, and we're going to need to put some revenue into this building, that I don't want to lose that capital that we put in. So is there any jeopardy of not getting a lease?
No, I don't think there's jeopardy there. I think we've had a good working relationship in terms of the operation, and I don't think there's any jeopardy there. I think that we'll be able to work out an extension.
And again, through the chair, I know you talked about the other lease. Hopefully we're going to be able to satisfy that soon. That's a little concerning, and I don't want to speak too much on it, but thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Charest. Councilor Sasslaw.
Thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to speak on this topic on the committee. Mr. Mayor, I just had a question. So following up on Councilor, I think it was Rosano brought up, regarding the lease of the golf course, I'm just trying to get some clarity. The lease, is that it's with Rousselet, is that correct? Okay. And do we own any of the 18 holes, or do they own all of the 18 holes?
It's about half and half.
Okay. And so you said currently we're, I guess what you might refer to as a tenant at will, where there is not an lease agreement. And in regards to that, is there a term, something in that lease where either party could back out given X amount of days notice? How does that, what instrument is in that current tenant at will process that we have?
Typically, there are in those type of contracts, Councilor. Let me look on that. I can get that answer to you pretty quickly.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I've also been a proponent, I think you've known from day one, for the women's locker rooms. I've been beating that drum, and anything I can help that process, I believe in that strongly as well. My concern is the transparency. I like to see, for instance, I guess the question, and maybe Mr. Gingras can answer this. I know the fiscal operating budget, it ends at the end of this month, but right now you said that we have an $88,000 deficiency at the skating rink. Are there any accounts, receivables at all that we are on the books that haven't come in yet?
And just let me, before I go to Mr. Gingras to answer that, I do want to say, because you're right on about the transparency part. That's critical to this. And I do anticipate and envision and plan that when we do present as an enterprise fund or a recreation enterprise fund, that it will very clearly spell out golf course and skating rink, just as we have in the past. It will be the same information in terms of operational costs, in terms of revenue, in terms of debt service, all that. That has to continue, and that will continue if we do go forward with this after a vote tonight. Maybe Mike, if you can address, Mr. Gingras, if you can address that question? Joe, can you ask again?
Yes, the question was regarding accounts receivable, balance payables, where we are with the skating rink. I know it was stated we have an $88,000 deficit, but are we 100% on accounts payable and accounts receivable?
No, there is some accounts receivable, I want to say roughly 20 or 30,000 to be collected. And to reiterate what the mayor just said, we will continue to account for separately the skating rink and the golf course in two pieces, the grounds budget and the clubhouse budget. So everything will remain the same. There'll just be more flexibility in the final bottom line numbers to spread between the two entities.
And so there's about 20 or 30,000 accounts receivable, so we also have 20 or 30,000 in accounts payable as well?
I'm not really sure what the bills, where the bills stand and how much is due to be paid yet. That'll close out by July 15th.
Okay. I think, just for the record, I think we all cherish both of these gyms, both the skating rink and the golf course, so I'm in full favor of trying to, renew the leases, extend the leases, things of that nature. What I would like to have seen, and I don't necessarily disagree with the thought process Councilor Turco brought up regarding skating, having its highs and lows, and the people that he mentioned, it would have been a little bit helpful. I would have liked to have seen maybe a 10-year look back about what each one did. It's very difficult. Besides the fact, as you said, Mayor, the money is the taxpayers' money no matter what. And what I look at this as one supplementing the other based upon the fact that some might have some up years, some might have some down years. But when I make a decision like that, I really feel it's incumbent upon me to have a look back to make that type of a decision. And as I did say, I do feel when you start, I appreciate and respect the fact that everyone's going to be separate and on paper and we can see it, but I guess my point is then why? And I also respect it's a 3-year commitment, but sometimes that commitment, it's a little bit difficult. There's a change of councilors who leave, so I do have some concerns about it. I don't think I could support it tonight. I certainly could potentially support it in the future, but for some of the reasons I stated tonight, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with it, just voting and supporting on it tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sasslaw. Councilor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, I'm not a member of this committee, but I appreciate you allowing me to speak. A lot of great points tonight, and to be clear, I understand the concept. It does, combining them into one enterprise fund does provide the city with flexibility to handle both of them from a financial standpoint, kind of dovetailing on not only what Councilor Rosendahl said, but also what Councilor Sasslaw said. There's so many moving pieces with both of these entities, leases, if you will. And then we just came out of having the debt service retired on the golf course, which is great. I think it's almost too new, and I like the fact that while they are both separate right now, it just gives a laser focus on what each of them is doing. And my overall concern is just, and that would not be anyone's intent, is that by combining them, we could unintentionally starve or feed one of the others, and just because of budget pressures or what we have with the economics of one of the entities or enterprises, we could do harm to it. And I know that would be not anyone's intent, because we've supported both of these for very good reasons, and I would continue to do that. I just like, given all the moving pieces, I would rather have them remain as separate enterprise funds, but that's just my thoughts at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Neill. Councilor Welton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. As I'm not on this committee, I will keep it brief. Conceptually, I agree with the idea. I think the idea of one entity floating the other is not uncommon in private business or in the public sector in other areas. I do appreciate that there's a lot of complexities with lease restrictions and things like that, so I can certainly understand some of the concerns that might have been voiced, but I think conceptually it makes sense to me. I do have a question, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. If the information's not there, I think it's just something that I would suggest we collectively look into. As we're talking about improvements, whether it be a locker room update for the women athletes that might be utilizing the ice rink, or improvements to the golf course, having leased properties, does that preclude us from pursuing private revenue to support? So for instance, if we did a small capital campaign to build out a locker room and it was branded, based on whichever local businesses might want to support it, or if each of the holes at the Meadows was sponsored by XYZ company, I think it's an easy opportunity for us to grab a significant amount of funding that would allow us to maybe supplement the public dollars that are going towards these improvements. I just don't know if that's possible given that they're both leased properties, but it might be something worth looking into.
Thank you, Councilor. Yeah, definitely we can look into those. Anything over at the skating rink has to be approved by the DCR and that state agency, which can prove to be difficult as well in terms of getting private financing or getting advertising revenue and things of that nature, which I think would help, certainly. But that's certainly something that we can look into.
And I'll just add, if I could, I think Councilor Turco did a good job with his comments, but the hockey and figure skating and the usage of the space at the arena, that's not going anywhere. There's continual investment in private rinks. There's a huge project that's going in Amesbury in the next couple of years that's bringing 6 new ice surfaces because there literally you can't get enough. One of the happiest days for me is when my daughter stopped playing ice hockey. That meant I didn't have to get up in the morning and go look for a rink somewhere, God knows where. But the reason that's a pain for most hockey parents is because there's limited ice. So I think it's in our city's best interest to hold on to that asset and do what we can to improve it, to capitalize off of it. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wildon. Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor, I'm in support of the combination of the two, the combining of the two. I think it's a great idea. I'm wondering if there's any opportunity, since it is recreation, the female locker room under the category of recreation with CPC. Is there any opportunity to see if that would be funded?
That's a good question.
Councilor McGinn,
Just trying to think if that would fit under one of the categories. I know it's open space / recreational, historical preservation, and affordable housing. And I think an argument could be made that it's recreational use. I think that's worth looking into. It's iffy.
Might be a stretch, but it's under the open space.
I always try to be optimistic, Councilor McGinn.
But Mayor, I will be optimistic.
I try to be optimistic, Councilor.
Worth a try. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Gould. Councilor Turco.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, do you mind if I ask Mr. Gingrich the 2 or 3 questions? Mike, with regards to Councilor Sasslaw's questions, I hate to put you on the spot, but you seem to be pretty good at this numbers thing. Do you have a rough look back at the last time at
I don't have the 10-year history off the top of my head, no.
Do you recall, I think it was you did mention the last time that the skating rink was profitable, and I think it was about 6.
Actually, I have some of that. I have from 2015 forward, there was a fund balance of $259,000 in 2015. And let's see, we ended up, we made $22,000 that year, $45,000 the next year, short $41,000 the following year, 2018 short $72,000, 2019 short $90,000. And we were short 205,000 last year, but we had remaining fund balance of 93,000. So we ended up with a deficit at year-end 2020 of 112,000. So that's what we're carrying now is a $112,000 deficit at the skating rink.
Thank you. So ultimately, the reserve is empty. There's no more money to be had there without going to the taxpayer, and that leads to my next question. If the council was not to support this, we go to the taxpayer. What's the increase in the average residential tax bill just for that 112,000 for this year only?
It's probably like $4 or $5.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Seeing no other councilors comment from myself, actually one of the last points that was made by you, Mr. Mayor, and it kind of reinforced by Mr. Gingras is keeping the accounting separate and intact as we see it today, because I think it is important that we can see how each entity is performing in isolation. So I think Councilor Welton said it, it's pretty common for this to be done kind of in the private side, but you'd be looking at kind of how each department is performing, right? And so there's no intent here to kind of commingle staffing, salaries, and that, and show that as lump sum numbers and expenses shown as lump sum. It would be distinctly separate, and we'd maintain it that way over time, just as we do today. And really, effectively, what we're doing is we're bringing these together only really at the retained earnings line. Is that correct?
100% correct, Councilor. If we need, in order to make sure that those departments and we are accountable, we need to have all that information broken down, and it will be supplied in individual departments together under the Recreation Enterprise Fund.
Great. That's what's of paramount importance to me. The whole idea of establishing an enterprise fund is to have that visibility into the performance of the entity. So I think we'll continue to see that, but this gives us that degree of flexibility to borrow from one or the other from year to year without going to the tax base, which we're required to do by law if there's a deficit. So we would not have that flexibility otherwise, which is the reason which is the reason I'm supportive of this. With that, what is the will of the committee? Councilor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion, if you are ready, sir.
Go ahead and proceed with the motion, Councilor Gould.
If I can read it directly from the letter from the mayor, is that okay, Mr. Chairman?
I think the motion's spelled out pretty clearly there, Councilor Gould, so if you do that, that would be great.
Great. To rescind the Skating Ring Enterprise Fund and Golf Course Enterprise Fund established under the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53F.5 of the Massachusetts General Laws at the end of fiscal year 2021, and to accept the provisions of Chapter 44, Section 53F.5 of the Massachusetts General Laws establishing a recreation enterprise that would include the skating rink, golf course departments effective for fiscal year 2022. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Councilors, you've heard the motion from Councilor Gould. On the motion, seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Gould.
Yes.
Councilor Manning Martin.
No.
Turco.
Yes.
Rossignol.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Moving on. Item B, transfer of fund, cable fund expense in an amount of $203,364.35. Mr. Gingras.
Thank you. This transfer request is to transfer funds to Peabody Access Television for the first quarter payment from Comcast. Thank you.
Questions from councilors? Councilor Gould.
Chairman, if there's no questions, I'd like to move forward with the motion, please.
I see no questions. Councilor Gould, please proceed.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the transfer of receipts reserved cable fund account number 270-0000-33017 in the amount of $203,364.35 to the account cable fund expense account number 270-0000-53007, again in the amount of $203,364.35. So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Councilors, you heard the motion from Councilor Gould on the motion. Seeing none, roll call.
Councilors Gould,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Turco,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. I'm sorry, we have a remote council. Roll call.
Councilors Gould,
Yes.
Manning Martin,
Yes.
Turco, Rozignol,
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0.
we're adjourned.